Welcome to episode 172 of Girl Take the Lead, where each week we explore womanhood and leadership. And I'm your host, Kiki Canny. Today, the girls are back to join me in discussing cults, a topic we all may hate to admit having some fascination with. First, a bit about cults. The exact number of cults in the world is difficult to determine, but estimates range from thousands to millions. Psychologist Steve Eichler estimates that there are up to 10,000 cults in the United States, but most operate under the radar. Eichel is known primarily for his work on destructive cults, coercive persuasion, mind control, brainwashing, and deprogramming. In the United Kingdom, estimates range from 500 to 2,000 cults, with memberships ranging from under 10 people to thousands. And in India, there are approximately 9,000 cults. Perhaps we find ourselves asking, how can someone abandon their previous identity and adopt a groupthink? Maybe it's about providing a sense of belonging or connection we all seek. Maybe they're attractive because they offer structure in a world with way too many options. Or maybe it's a response to things we can't control, like climate change, war, or injustices. Or maybe, as we've discussed in our previous episode, it's a response to isolation. Whatever the reason, it's good to take a closer look at this topic with a little help from a book which the girls and I will share with you. And perhaps after listening, you'll start asking yourself the question, kind of like me, is this group I belong to a little cultish? Enjoy the listen, and here you go. So, girls, welcome back to Girl Take the Lead. Girls are in the house.
Hey, Mom.
Hello.
So great. I always get so excited. I just so value your time and coming on the show. And boy, this talk is going to be a good one, I think. And why don't you just introduce yourselves real quickly to the audience so they get used to your voices?
Yep, I'm Emma. I'm the millennial daughter, and I'm also a low-key cult, not admirer. I'm an interested student of what cults are about. I think that's the best way to describe it. And a true crime fanatic. I am a true crime fanatic.
Yep.
Love. And hi, I'm Kiki. I am the Gen Zer, she, her pronouns. And I also love a good true crime moment. It's kind of a running joke that we all watch Dateline while falling asleep, so it's kind of second nature to this family to enjoy talking about true crime and, cults here and there. So I'm a little bit of a novice when it comes to that. So I'm excited to talk about our topic, Mom.
Yeah, great. So
Also, my pronouns are she, her.
Yeah.
I forgot to say
her mine. Emma, I think you're the one who introduced the book to me and said, "Oh, Mom, I think this would be a good one for the podcast." So, and we should probably just repeat that the book is called Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. And we should also mention that Amanda has her own podcast.
Yes, which I'm an avid admirer of. The podcast is called Sounds Like a Cult. She kind of looks at like different aspects of the zeitgeist, like, the cult of Lululemon, the cult of Trader Joe's, and kind of evaluates them on like how scary of a cult are they? Like, should we worry about it, or is it just like, it's fine. It's not super scary. But I listened to the book on audiobook like a couple months ago. So I finally actually listened to the book, Cultish. And I thought it was just so interesting because like the first half, she talks about like actual, I think what we would call actual cults, like, Heaven's Gate, Manson family, like those kinds of
Branch Davidian, I think, is in there.
Yeah. her dad was in a cult, so she talks about that as well. Like,
And I think that one is called Synanon.
yes, Synanon, yeah. It was in the Bay Area, yeah. So like she was talking about that. And then in the second half, she kind of talks about how, people like businesses and such in the modern day also kind of implement like the same sort of like cultish language that like cults use to kind of indoctrinate people. So it was very interesting. And I thought, like this kind of overlaps with like, you know, business, like
Mhm.
general societal stuff. That's why I recommended it.
Yeah, I thought, well, and if you check her background out, she's her um, degree was in linguistics,
Yeah.
right? So she's going to tune into language. And I think one of her first points is that language is probably the first thing that gets adopted into cults, and it's the last thing to leave because it doesn't require much investment in order to sound like you belong, just
Yeah.
because you're picking up the lingo and you have your secret kind of words and meaning for things. um I thought that we could look at almost anything in a group, right, and go, oh well, we invent our own words and we have our own meaning to them. And I can just remember you guys in middle school, that you'd come home with these words and I'd go, what are you saying? But they had a meaning, right? So I thought it was really interesting that she talks first about the words and the language around cults and how you can get sucked in very easily to belong by just using some of those words. Um, and I think she talks about things like being cultish, right? Because most of us think of cults as kind of a black and white thing, a good or a bad thing. And she kind of has different views on that. And you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, kind of like going to your point about kind of using like the right language, the like right language, right words to kind of signal like that I'm in the in crowd. Like working at certain like she uses the example I think of Lululemon, like working at Lululemon, there's like different terms that they have for like different things that like is goes beyond just like normal retail lingo. And it really like, and especially like the way that like the corporate language kind of change it, like it's corporate in like informing this like societal trend, like in this little mini society of Lululemon. And it also kind of using their lingo to kind of like show that you fit in is also giving power and agency to the corporation of Lululemon and the brand of Lululemon,
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of being like, I want to be in the in crowd. So it's kind of like, the words are part of it. Like the words have a lot more power than I think people would give credit to.
Right.
So like it's not necessarily like using the words like at Lululemon are good or bad, but by using the words, you are recognizing and acknowledging that there's power in like using the words
Mm-hmm.
intentionally, and there's like intention behind like why you're using the words. And as a result and as a consequence, you're elevating the brand, you're making it seem exclusive. And like as we all know from like hype culture, if it's exclusive, everybody wants to buy in. It kind of is that supply and demand. If there's scarce supply, the demand
Yeah.
goes crazy. It's kind of a weird example of that. So, yeah, like that's kind of contextually like one example, I would think.
Well, I think you also mentioned that I don't think maybe it was Yuki that said that there was a documentary about Brandy Melville on HBO or something or Max, and I ended up watching that, and that was pretty scary to watch because, to your point, Emma, there was the language, but then they carried it through their entire organization, right? Did you
Mhm.
guys shop there? Did you feel that when you went there?
No, I think Emma can probably agree with me on this, but I think with Brandy Melville, it was definitely a brand that catered to a specific kind of girl. And
Yeah.
that was a type of girl that was seen in the creator's eyes as, quote, the most like beautiful, slender, really skinny, like
Yeah.
size zero, like not even a two,
Yeah.
maybe like
Two's
a
too big.
zero, two's too big. But it was a one size, fits all, but then they changed it to one size fits most, and
Or some.
or some, but I think they advertise it as one size fits most, like um it had this exclusivity to it, and if you fit in the clothes, then you had value, and that's very dangerous for young girls, when you're going through that really vulnerable time in your life as a, teenager or even a preteen. You're really creating that sense of confidence and self-worth and identity, and so it's a really messed up situation all around. But I think also the racism that was present in Brady Melville as a culture and as a brand as well is something to acknowledge. In their advertisements, no women, no girls of color, like all white. And I do believe that there was something put out by I'm not sure if it was the creator of Brandy Melville or just like a like regional director or something like that, or a district manager, but they came out and closed down a Brandy Melville store in Canada. I believe it was like Toronto because, too many girls, of color were shopping there, and
Right.
too many girls of color were getting hired to be there, so it's a very dangerous, brand, and just one that was profiting off of, exclusivity and, insecurity and just, really bad things. But it was a very interesting documentary. But yeah, definitely good example of them using that language, and that, you know, if you fit into these clothes and this beauty standard, then you're the ideal girl, you're the ideal woman.
Yeah. Well, I think also too it was taking advantage of um, girls at a very young age. And I mean, the documentary talked showed a lot of the women that were employed there and what they went through to work there,
Yeah.
which also eked of control and just a bad situation all around, I think.
Yeah, it also reminds me of Abercrombie and Fitch, and kind of prior to their rebranding, because, I think Gen Z finally was like, we've had enough of this. Like, we've had enough of the body shaming and the racism and all of this stuff, happening, and we're not going to consume, brands that promote this type of stuff. But with Abercrombie, I mean, they had models that would greet you at the door, and Victoria's Secret too also had that thing. And I think we've talked about it before, Mom, where, like, I think in marketing your experience, like back then, you saw this product and the supermodel with it, and you were like, I know this isn't obtainable, or I know this is like a reach, but it's something that
Mm-hmm.
worked for that consumer at that time, seeing,
Right.
someone that doesn't look like them. And, but now it's like very different. Um, but yeah, so I was just going to mention too that Abercrombie kind of had the same thing. Victoria's Secret, the fashion show,
Yeah.
same thing, kind of that exclusivity. If you look like this, and specifically with Abercrombie, I guess what I was going to mention is, like, teens would be shopping at that store, and they would get approached and offered a job, if they
Yeah.
look a certain way, and how that must, make them feel like they have, a sense of worth or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty insane that employees also had to go through some of those things as well.
Yeah. Now she mentions Soul Cycle in the book, and you guys have had friends who have worked there and been involved in that. Do you think that it was pretty cultish?
I think Soul Cycle, especially in like the Bay Area, it's
Mhm.
definitely cultish. Like my friends that worked there, I don't think they would say it was a cult, mostly because like they're the kind of person where it was like if it was culty, they'd be like, I'm not going to participate in that. Like right off the bat.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
but
Thinking
I
of a
think,
couple of your friends, I just
yeah,
can't see them.
I just can't see them doing it. They're like they don't buy into trends. They're kind of their own very independent people. I mean,
Mhm.
cults can draw in anybody. I think that's kind of the whole point that I think people forget. And especially because like cults want, like, like Kiki was saying, like cults want those perfect people. There those resources, those people that look the right way, you know, as part of their brand or group or what have you. And like my friends fit that to a T because they were all athletes and it all worked for them. But I think Soul Cycle is just I think it's like the fact that like because Amanda Montell does an episode on the cult of Soul Cycle. And I remember in that episode, she was talking about like how people will like center their lives around the Soul Cycle classes that you have to like register for in advance, like a week in advance to get a spot. There's like the trainers that people follow and like love. And this is kind of the same with Peloton. And like I think in those aspects, like when people center it in their lives, similar to like how people would do a belief system, that's when it's kind of cultish. And I think in the Bay Area, it's very much kind of like, oh, like, I'm going to slow cycle, like, especially like with like flex remote workers who work in tech, especially, it's like, I'm going to go to my soul cycle class, like on my lunch. I'll see you later. I would say it's pretty culty. Same with like, I mean, but I think in the Bay Area, that's the same with like almost all like bar classes, like core power yoga, like
Yeah.
all these like very like commercial, like luxurious, exclusive like fitness brands, I think are all kind of culty in their own way. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna stop like paying for their services, but it is like I have to admit, like there is kind of a part of it. Like even I used to have a Equinox gym membership, which is like a very luxury gym, and mostly because it was the closest gym to us.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm making big girl money now. I'm going to get myself an Equinox membership. And I've told Kiki this, like literally everybody in that gym. I hated working out there because everybody in that gym was so pretty. They were all rich. They were all really fit. And you're just there, like, I'm just there to, like get my cardio up, like take care of my health. And these people are all just like there, like live like working out for 3 hours, which like who has 3 hours to work out, in one session? So it's like in those aspects, it's like there's parts of it where it's like there's the inherent exclusivity and like the inherent like, we're better than you
Yeah.
sort of mentality
Well,
that kind of leads to the culty.
one of the things that probably is good to mention is the checklist that um, Amanda gives us in the book, and she talks about in her podcasts. Um, and there's 7 aspects to it. One, it has a charismatic leader. 2, there's indoctrination. 3, a group mentality. 4, control tactics. 5, us versus them mentality. 6, rituals and practices. And 7, financial exploitation. And she says that as you check off these things on the list, that one of the very lowest level of concern can be just live your life. Like in a lot of cases, we've given examples of people go, they live their life, they leave. But then she mentions these things can escalate to a second level, which is watch your back. So it kind of means like I think to take that she was talking about people that can hurt you either emotionally or physically or even spiritually,
Financially.
financially. And then the highest level is get the F out. So um, I think as we look at these things, it's so good, right, to be aware of different elements that are happening. And yeah, and some of them you might laugh at and you might, but then like I remember one dinner we had and Emma, I think you were still working at Facebook and we
I
had a
must have.
guest we had a guest over who was working at Facebook. And it was like there was a religion going on at the table as people were talking about Facebook. And it was like, oh boy, there is a real indoctrination that goes on there. Do you think so, Em?
Yeah, I mean, I will be the first to say, I mean, I have to make a personal disclaimer that like the quality of life that I have now is great because I've worked at tech companies that might be a little bit fishy. But there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, and that goes for labor. But yeah, like I mean, I think tech companies in general thrive off of this sort of like exclusive stuff like Asana, which is like a program management software. My friend who works there, she was telling me that they have a yoga room on the top floor of their building, and like the founder like made sure that they had a yoga room for him on like the top floor. And it's like that weird sort of charismatic leader sort of I buck tradition, like that sort of maverick style like business person, sort of mentality that thrives in Silicon Valley. I think is just breeds. Like Elon Musk is a great example. Like it just
Right.
breeds like followers and like the sort of culty social relationship. And at Facebook, I would agree. I mean, like corporations are the number one cults, I think, in a lot of ways, because like, when you're working there, you're kind of like they're trying to inspire you to work to make money for them. And so you kind of, I mean, this is a personal opinion, this is not fact. But I personally believe that like they are trying to convince you to like stay working there because they do need you in some way to do your job as much as you need them. But because you have this sort of power dynamic, it's are inherently very like disjointed because like you need them way more than they need you. You're replaceable. And
Mhm.
so like even though at Facebook it was all very culty and stuff, it was I was very aware because I was a contractor as well, whereas the other person at the dinner table was a full-time employee. As a contractor, I was very aware. I was like, I there's all this weird lingo. I can fit in as much as I want. I can be as close to my manager, but I am extremely replaceable compared to like there was already like because like
Yeah.
contractors have less accessibility and rights and well rights, they have less benefits and luxuries compared to like full-time employees. So you're already kind of like lower than the full-time employee. So
But
there's
maybe
already a
that's a
power
good
dynamic that's
thing.
kind of weird.
Maybe that's a good thing though, Em, so that you can get the F out if you needed to.
Oh yeah. I mean that Theranos is a great example of like a tech company cult gone wrong. Like the
Mhm.
for people who don't know, Theranos was it was founded by Elizabeth Holmes. It was a failed startup that claimed to be able to do blood testing to see if you had like cancers, Alzheimer's. It was like very, very like big. It was very like, it was going to change the world. And then it, you know, spectacularly went down in flames. But like she tried to embody this like charismatic leader, you know, that Jeff Bezos and like Steve Jobs had. And she was kind of implementing that. And like it went terribly wrong. So like it could happen.
Yeah. But then I think things happen like layoffs, right? They kind of wake you up and go, oh, yeah, this is not necessarily a place that's going to take care of me, or, it's a place where you can leave at will. So probably on the scale, it would be, live your life. Like, yeah, live your life. Just leave if you need to, stay if you want. But
Yeah.
um, I'm wondering if there are, well, one of the things that she's talked about too is podcasts being cultish. Like,
I
I
agree.
don't see it, right?
Oh, mom, let me introduce you to a man called Joe Rogan.
Yes,
Joe
I
Rogan's
guess you
like,
have to have like 10 million views per episode to kind of qualify. But I guess,
Yes,
yeah,
but also share some certain ideals, like Joe Rogan.
yeah.
yeah.
And gosh, like Andrew Tate, like there's
Yeah.
when I think of like culty podcast folks, I think of those guys.
Yeah, I don't think a girl take the lead as being very cultish.
We're certainly not intending to be, I don't think.
No. So, I looked at that and I went, Podcasting. I don't I don't quite see it, but you're right. And probably some of the followers on the true crime episodes and things might feel like
Yeah.
there's certain kind of membership and ownership of it.
Oh yeah, like I'm one of my favorite podcasts is Small Town Murder, and I've listened to it since like I think the actual beginning, which I think it's been like 10-ish years.
Yeah.
I had a whole different career back then. My goodness. But their fan base is like very strong, very powerful, committed. They will like drive hours to go see a live show in a different state. Like their people donate to them all the time so they can keep the podcast going because it's just two comedians like doing this, like and doing a bunch of other podcasts as well. It's like I can totally see it. I think there's something about also about like there's the cult of true crime, which again, Amanda Montell does a really great episode
Yeah.
on. There is a certain weirdness. It's kind of one of those things where it's like within reason, I think it's okay to be like very interested in true crime, kind of try and understand it, be mystified by the mystery. And then there's people who are like, go be above and beyond to try and solve crimes like on their own. And it's like, you know, the ethics get kind of dicey after a while, but I think, it is a very much like, live your life. Yeah, that's just what I think.
So what I do like about what she does though is it does bring us to be a certain observer. Like when she talks about even the army and the cult of being in like being an army wife and whoa, that was a good episode. I hope
Great.
I'll link to that in the show notes for
Yeah.
people because that one was like, whoa, there is such a sense of rigor and belonging that you've got to conform to.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's also one of the other things I think she brings up in general on her podcast that like like it kind of adds to the cultiness, kind of circle back. It's like when we talk about like exit costs, like in a cult, it's like, can you leave the cult without severe repercussions?
mhm.
I think in I'm gonna say like social cults, just to lack a better term, like for social cults like Lululemon, Soul Cycle, like if you leave and you lose all your friends because all your friends were also doing soul cycle and they won't talk to you because you don't do soul cycle anymore because you got injured, you can't do it anymore, whatever. I mean, that's pretty culty, right? Like it's kind of the same sort of if we kind of compare it to that like exit cost criteria.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention to LuLaRoe definitely had a
Yes.
very severe exit cost. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
heard about that, Mons.
No, what talks in a little bit about that, Key.
So LuLaRoe was basically a multi-level marketing
Mm,
scheme where, you know, basically it was well known for selling like leggings and clothes. So they sold clothes. But basically how it would go is that people would buy their inventory and then sell it. The more that you bought, I think you had to buy a certain amount per month.
Yeah.
And you got bonuses if you recruited people for your
mhm,
team. Um, and definitely for a period of time, it was a very successful business. And then at some point, the quality declined because they were making so many leggings and not storing them properly. So they were storing them like outside in California heat, and as we all know, it's very hot. And so
It
the
gets
moisture would get
moldy.
trapped, they would get moldy, they would get mildew, and it was just kind of gross. So the reputation of the brand started to decline, and the quality of clothes started to decline, and people were starting to leave um the MLM. And I was mentioning exit costs being really severe, um, because basically if you left the the business or the cult, like definitely cultish, LuLaRoe was,
Yes.
because these girls or these women that you're doing this with are supposed to be like your sisters. They're supposed to be like super tight and making friends for life. They had conferences, cruises, like and they wanted you to live a very lavish lifestyle, buying cars, having nice homes to show people what you could do if you joined
Mm-hmm.
the brand. But right when you left, those people turned on you. And there's a really great Vice documentary about some different stories of women who have uh, gone through that, and just how they were kind of silenced and, just kind of pushed away by the people that thought that they made friends for life with. So it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
Hulu made a documentary, right? Was it Hulu or was it Amazon? There was a really good Lulu Road documentary.
I think there's a
Okay.
couple, but Vice
I
is a
know
really
Vice
good
did
one.
one.
We'll find
Yeah.
Yeah.
the link to it so we can give it to our listeners.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I just put up an episode about my sorority and um, getting back together with our friends, after 50 years. And it was so cool, right? Because
Mhm.
but if you think about a sorority, there are definitely rituals. There's a definite language that you learn when you're in kind of a sorority. Um, there can be a them versus us mentality.
Mhm.
Um, I know it sometimes if someone wasn't in a fraternity, you didn't date them. It's like you're supposed to only date certain people. Our house never followed that rule, but there were definitely things for other I could see in the sorority system that happened. And it did have a bit of cultish vibe to it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with me. I mean, I also joined a sorority and I mean, we were at a liberal arts college. So like I wouldn't imagine those like rush videos you see on TikTok. It was very low key, but like even then I think like it wasn't so much like people I was dating, but it was like people I was friends with. Cause like I made friends freshman you at my school, you could only rush second semester freshman year, you couldn't do first semester. So like a bunch of friends I made first semester like at college, like were very cool. They were from a bunch of different like walks of life, different friend groups. And I just remember like after rushing and joining, like I'm like I would hang out with them like at lunch. Like if I saw them, I'd be like, "Hi, can I hang out with you?" And like I would get like judged hardcore for that. And I'm literally just like, dude, like they're my friends. Like you want us to be so I think it's like when they kind of preach but they don't practice.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, like you want to be you want to be social with everybody, you want to be outgoing, friendly. Because like for us, it was like not to kind of give the sorority's name away, but the moral was like our philanthropy message was like, to uplift confidence among young women. And I'm like, I'm doing that just by being friends with them and like saying like, hey, hope you have a good day.
Yeah.
And like, if they're saying I can only do that to some people, that goes against what you're telling me to do. So, I mean, it was all kind of creepy. And I mean, like me and my sorority sister friends that were still really good friends to this day, like we
Yeah.
all joke being like, oh my God, it was such a cult.
Well, and at the time, it probably served a purpose, but I think when I look back on it now, it definitely had its vibes about that, but it also was something you could leave anytime. You didn't have a real strong economic loss. So it
Yeah, but you
probably,
lost all your friends if you left. So there is that. There's a
so
social pressure.
maybe something like a middle ground between like that, um, the 2 points that she had. One was live your life, and the other one was watch your back. So maybe sororities can be in between those because I don't think it's extreme enough to. Well, there probably are examples, right? There are
Yeah, like
where
I'm
people have
thinking
died.
Yeah, I'm thinking like I think Alabama sororities were under heat, I think recently because like they can be also like it's like a perfect like melting pot for racism,
Yeah,
sexism, like all those stuff. Like when it gets into that, like
yeah,
it you can't help but say like, dude, I think this is kind of culty. But yeah, I think it really does depend which school you're
yeah,
at.
yeah.
It could be any
Exactly.
sorority, but like if you're like at my liberal arts college, I'd say like, it's very much like a live your life. Like
Yeah,
you'll live if you're not a part of it.
yeah,
But it's also like if you leave, there's still social consequence. And
yeah,
like, I know at bigger schools, my friends were in sororities at bigger schools, they would literally make you wear the same outfit and like tell you what outfit to wear for like rush or for like recruitment. And they would force you to pay like $1,000 for a whole new wardrobe just to be at recruitment when you're already in the sorority. So like it's very much kind of like, it really depends on where you're at.
Exactly. See what you missed, Key, by not being in one?
Yeah, thank God. It kind of worked out because at my school, like I wanted to try and get into a sorority. I guess my sign up just didn't go through and I didn't get notified of anything. So it all worked out though. Probably I ended up just fine.
Yeah.
Certainly did.
Had good grades, good friends, like it all worked out.
There was another good question I think she brings up in the book is why are people looking for cults now? Like what is it? And she mentioned, that something about religion, declining religion, and people are not feeling connected and attached to the group think, of that religion used to hold for people. What do you guys think about that? I mean, what do you think? Because I mean, this whole month I've been doing episodes about connection and how we are just starved for connection. Maybe
Yeah.
that's at the heart of it.
I think, yeah. And I think, Kiki can definitely like, go, hold on, let me find the word. Kiki can build on what I'm saying, but I think especially for millennials, I'll speak for the millennials and the millennials that I particularly know. I think a lot of us like we grew up with like religion. I think for the most majority of it, but I think we found that like at least the religions that we grew up with, like, and speaking for myself, like, mom, you raised us Catholic, which I think in hindsight, I'm glad you did because it gave us a good moral compass. But I think as I got older and I kind of looked at like who I was as a person and like, you know, I was kind of looking at like what I like cared about. And at that point, it was like I had a lot of friends who were part of the LGBTQ plus community. And like I really like my best friend is intersex. Like, they weren't intersex they didn't realize that they were intersex at the time, but like, they were queer from day one. And, thinking about that and like trying to reconcile that with my religion, it was like there's something not fitting. And I think especially like the vibe that I got from like some of the Catholicism that I internalized, and it was just a personal experience, just contextualizing it for people out there. I found that like it was just like there was no place for women. Like if I wanted to volunteer, there was like only a certain way I could do that. Like, I couldn't really like have the same sort of I could tell that there was like an imbalance between like the men and women in the church. And I think I was like, that's not for me. So I bucked that. And then I think about like my friends, we all kind of had a similar vibe. And I think, secularism is on the rise at the same time that extremism is on the rise. So like, it's kind of like a counteracting towards that. And like, I think we're replacing that with like, you know, what can we like screw religion. I still want to find community. Like I think about my friends post college, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but it's like making new friends after college when you're no longer in the place where you went to college is very scary. And like it's really hard to do that. Like, there's not a lot of outlets you can other than like a book club, right? You can just like go ahead and try and make friends. And like people are trying to do that online, like Bumble BFF is a thing, like, but like you still struggle to find community in this like weird age that we live in. And I think, being like, well, let me try soul cycle class. Like maybe I'll meet people that are cool. Like maybe, and especially I think if you're like, particularly like if you're trying to date too, like that's an extra reason to like be social and be a part of these groups and find some sense of belonging that's not like that doesn't portray itself as rigid as religion.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anything you want to add, Key?
Um, no, I think I kind of agree with that. I think that yeah, it's definitely harder this time and age, I think, for some of us to find communities to really belong to. I think we're a very like digitized generation and you know, don't really go out like as much like to bars, or I mean, we still do, but I think there's definitely a new generation where it's very easy to meet people like online and things like that and have that kind of connection. But if you're not doing that, then I feel like definitely start for connection. I was just talking to a friend of mine who knows a friend that is also on Bumble BFF because they moved somewhere that they don't have any friends at, and they moved because of their partner's job. Um, so it's just tough, and I think we're human, we desire that kind of belonging, and I think it's something kind of primal, like we want to be part of the pack, we want to have protection and be safe, and I think it's just a very basic human need um that gets fulfilled by maybe participating in those communities and feeling a sense of belonging there.
Yeah, definitely. And we just have to kind of listen and watch because most of us go into those not realizing, that there could be cultish kind of tendencies for the people or what people are saying to you and
Yeah.
what's keeping you a member and involved. I think it's just a good wake up call. I think the book was very good at that. Anything else we need to cover? My cultish friends, because our family's a cult.
The
Yeah, the
Canny
Canny family is a
family.
cult.
Oh no.
Oh
No, I
no.
think I think we talked about anything that was on my mind at least.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for joining your mom. Oh, you're
Love
so
you.
Of course.
and thank you for joining us, listeners. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
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 Thank you for listening today, and we sure hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell a friend about us. Join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead, or visit our website, girltaketheleadpod.com. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And we're on YouTube Music where you can find a video of this episode. Here are 3 takeaways. 1. Language is likely to be the first thing we're willing to change about ourselves and the last thing to leave when being influenced by cultish organizations or personalities. 2. Not all cultish organizations are bad, and it's good to evaluate them on a 3-level categorization Amanda Montell offers, beginning with live your life, moving to watch your back, and finally, get the F out. 3. As we search for connections and belonging, we need to be aware of the different characteristics of cultish behavior. Our next episode will kick off our month about topics having to do with self-care. Our first one will feature our guest, Julie B. Julie is an entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience and the author of the book, Burned: How Business Owners Can Overcome Burnout and Fuel Success. Julie shares her personal story about transforming burnout into a force of change. She helps us see some of the warning signs we all might be experiencing, no matter where we are in life, that can lead us towards burning out. Please join us again and talk to you soon. Bye.